How did you end up in Paris, and Steve? What was your a long way from home and all that?
Yeah, well, I was living in Brisbane. So I grew up in Byron Bay, which, if you know Australia, it's about 2 hours south of Brisbane, I guess. But it's a little small place. I moved up to Brisbane to go to university and then ended up playing in bands there for many years. And I was at a stage where the band I was in, it broke up. It was a bummer. We were just at the stage of starting to, get a bit more of a following, and we're going to quit our jobs and just play music. And yeah, had a big fight and broke up. And that meant I was sort of bandless for, you know, not tied to Brisbane for the first time in a long time, and I was single too. So I was looking for something to do, and I have a day job where I work in software development. I think, it'd be nice to do.
Yeah, you're like,
And they kind of
what
they
could
got,
happen?
yeah. Well, they called my bluff, is what happened, and offered to fly me to and find an apartment and the whole thing. So that doesn't happen often. So I moved over, and then it's been nine years, but it was not the plan. But there you go.
And when you moved, did you have an inkling that it would be like this, or had you still kind of plans to further your music career in other ways,
Yeah, I
in a more
mean,
full time way?
it was like, you can't say no. Like I said, it was a joke, and it's not something you say no to. So I thought I'd give it a go for a while. I don't work there anymore. I stayed there for about 4 or 5 years, and then decided to go a bit harder on the music and quit the full time job. So I did that in, unfortunately, late 2019 to start really pushing in 2020, which didn't really.
No. So, what can you say, man? It's
Yeah, it
like,
wasn't the best time to
uh,
book a tour.
you're like, damn, next time.
Yeah.
What's the scene like in Paris?
It's a funny one. Like I said, when I moved over, it was for that games company, and I didn't play a lot of music for a while. I sort of took a bit of a break from it, to learn French, to learn this software I was working on, and
So
uh,
you came to Paris with a minimal French
yeah,
knowledge, just
virtually
like,
nothing, virtually nothing. Yeah. So I had to learn fast, and was missing playing though, so I started looking around a bit and found bits and pieces. It's a funny town. Now I know it better. I actually moved out of Paris about mid COVID as well, so I'm about an hour away on the train now and more rural. But Paris, the folk scene is a bit tough. I've just started to find some nice folks doing stuff there in the past probably 2 years now. There's a little group of folks doing it, but yeah, it's an interesting one. The there's a lot of expats more than Frenchies, I suppose. Well, there are a few Frenchies doing it, but I think the language thing is a big part of it. A lot of the music, I play Americana, folky sort of music, and a lot of the people we love and hold up in that genre, and the music I write is heavy on the words. That's kind of the point. Um, and the grasp of the English language by the Frenchies isn't as great as, say, in Germany or Netherlands or
mm.
Scandinavia or any of the other countries in Europe, where there's a bigger following, I think, of this kind of music. So
Have you found some um, more appropriate venues then to play? Is there a kind of a network or
yeah, there's
a,
there's a,
a
a
few
little group of
places you can
guys.
call on?
Um, I think they're called Folk and Friends, that are doing a little thing regularly, like a monthly, very nice night of 3 or 4 bands, sort of thing, on a boat on the side of the river, which I've played a couple of. They've been great, and yeah, bits and pieces.
Anything comparable between where you are now and where you grew up and where you're from originally,
Oof, not a
musically?
lot. Not a lot around here. No, I definitely feel, especially like I said, now I'm out of Paris. I'm in a tiny little rural French village, and I am decidedly the only Australian and the only folk singer. I'm a bit of an
It's a
alien
unique
around here.
marketing point
Yeah,
right there. Eh?
yeah. I played the village festival. Was it last year? 14th of July.
Oh yeah,
It was a good time.
yeah, totally, man.
But it was a beautiful. Like, I was I did the first lockdown in Paris, and that was pretty tough, living in a shoebox apartment, and we couldn't go outside at all. So we moved down to the countryside here, and did the rest of all of that period here, which was basically where I wrote most of the album I put out recently, and it certainly made that part of life a lot more livable being out here.
That's a nice segue. Your website's great, by the way. I don't know if you had a hand in that yourself.
Yeah, I'm a one-man operation.
Little pat in the back, It's great, man. It's kind of, it makes
save a bit of money.
Spend it a bit. Oh, definitely.
I did most of my own artwork and all the web stuff, and I wrote even the program, the store, the merch store, and everything. It's all me. So.
Good stuff, because it makes it a more pleasurable experience if you have some time to go through someone's website and you take a look at what you've posted there, of course. So the most recent album was Nothing Stays the Same Way for Long.
Yeah.
And
so that's my first full-length album with just my name on it. I was in a lot of bands for a long time. We put out records, but it's the first one of full-length album of just me.
And from what I read on your website, it was an interesting kind of meeting of minds with your English friend.
Yeah, my buddy Joe. So he, I met him in 2019. Yeah, 2019. I went over to the States for a few weeks. Part of it was at a songwriting retreat, workshopy camp sort of thing. With that band, folk duo called the Milk Carton Kids. Are you familiar with them?
I do, yeah.
So they were running this thing, and with Joe Pug as well, another great songwriter. He was there, if you know him. But there were about 40 of us who were there for about 4 days, I think. And it was magic.
Were you out in the boonies somewhere? Was it typically in
upstate New York, like Catskills, like near Woodstock? Really beautiful up in the mountains. It was magic. None of us were quite sure what it would be like.
This is your first time doing something?
Yeah, and it was their first time doing that camp too.
All right.
So it was all a bit unknown, whether it was just going to be sort of rich fans or whatever, but it was actually, everyone was there was a really, really good songwriter. And they all became very good friends of mine. And Joe Boone was there, and he's a young songwriter from England, probably the best guitarist I think I've ever met.
Well, some great performances on YouTube with the two of you as well.
We did those in November last year. Yeah, that's been a little thing we've been putting out when I was back there. But I asked him if he wanted to help make a record and produce it with me. So he said yes. And we started it through COVID at distance. Like I was recording here or when in my apartment in Paris, at least doing demos. And then we decided we'd prefer to do it in person. So we sort of waited until I was able to travel. I've got several passports now because I have an Australian one. I always had dual citizenship with the UK, which let me live here, but then I've also got a French one now. So I was able to, when the border restrictions were still quite stiff, but citizens were able to move, I could get to England and also could get into France to come back. So I went over there and did a record. We spent about 6 weeks making it over there in southwest England, North Devon, with mostly me and Joe and a couple other girls, two girls that were also at that camp, Bryony Lewis and Cara McKee, who sang all the harmonies on the record. And otherwise, it was all us, except there's 2 or 3 little pieces that we got sort of found people online to do a little bit of violin and a little bit of pedal steel.
Kind of fill the sound a wee bit that you couldn't do yourself, but
just things we didn't have instruments for.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe that's too.
Talented bastards. He could play everything. He played the drums and the keys and the guitar, and I played a bit of keys, but he played most of it.
Don't you hate those guys? They're just like you're just like, come on, Oh, he's a spare oboe I've got lying around, one of those guys, marimba handy. But they're always good to know those guys, right? When you're in a pinch or in a jam. Some of the songs on the albums, as I was kind of listening to it the last week or so, the No, and see if I can get them in the right order. So, Blue Eyed Annie's an older track.
No, that came with the
No,
writing of the
that came
record as
off it.
well.
Is
The
it?
the the,
Is it
the
the
old one
Wolf?
is
It's older.
the old one is Mary, the track 2. I wrote that a long time ago. That song Mary is also on that. I put out a little EP in 2017, I think. That was sort of my first toe back in the water of doing stuff under my own name, and that was on that. But I wrote that back probably more than 10 years ago. So that was the one old one. All the other ones were new.
So the kind of songs that are prominent or coming to mind, you've got The Wolf,
Mm-hmm.
Now I Don't, and I think the third one I said was Blue Eyed Annie.
Yeah, sure.
Is that right? Can you tell? I'm curious to hear. So one of the opening line is something about being in a band.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
the
it's
Wolf. Yeah,
that's the Wolf. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. There's uh, how can I say it? Like, there's quite a lot of songs on the record that I think were written towards memories and stuff of like where life used to be back in Australia, I suppose. That one and Little Pearls of Water and a few others are all definitely aimed at like, I've got so much space from life back then now, so I'm looking back at over there. And all of them are also sort of touching on, I don't know, there's a lot of songs about alcohol and stuff like that on the record as well, but which is sort of some personal experience and some story experience as well, and thinking about, when you're writing songs, you think about friends and other people, and things you've met along the way and people like that you sort of all work in together.
So there's maybe it was one of the interviews I read also on your website. It was talking. I see I'm blagging all this stuff now and pretending it's mine, right? I'm like, good old research. It was an interview you did with I forget the website, but they were asking you some questions and stuff. But you were talking about where you get your, just as we mentioned earlier there as well, about where the lyrics from and the stories and the words and so on. What comes first for you? Is it the words or the tunes?
The tunes. I think they're kind of one and the same, or separately and together or something. I don't know. It's never one. I never sit down and say I'm just going to do this first. I'll have, I think, like most songwriters these days, the voice memos on this thing is
it's a great tool.
You're just hundreds of them of little, noodling things on a guitar, and you hum and try and like
keep it for later kind of thing.
Keep it for later, and quite often I think it's like nonsense sounds. Like if I have like a melody that sounds right, you just sort of sing, scrambled eggs or whatever, and sometimes the words just, or at least rhymes, like vowel sounds that will fit nicely over that cadence come out, and that can sort of be a way in. And then sometimes I have lines and things like that I've also got, notebooks full of shit that I add to all the time, and we'll try and sometimes smash them together. If take this chunk of words and this voice memo thing and see if they work together. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I try other different orders, and once I've got a hold of at least something, I can start rolling from there. Like it might just be a chorus, or sometimes it's a first verse and I don't have the chorus for ages. Sometimes there'll be a gap in a song for a long time. I think, I'm trying to remember back now, but I'm pretty sure the Wolf, that first verse, the once I played in the rock and roll band part, was the last bit I wrote, and it took a long time to get. I had the other parts of it, but at the very start, there was just a few. I don't know. I overthink things for a long time, sometimes fitting just the right syllables in where really nobody's ever going to notice.
Well, you do.
I get stuck on it. Like I'll have a song will be finished it'll be written in 2 days, except for literally sometimes one line, like one rhyme I can't find that makes me happy. And it'll be like that for 2 months more sometimes. And then I'll finally get it. And
right, done. Do you have some new material ready to go? I mean, you have a kind of a You were saying there are notebooks of stuff and whatnot. Have you got
Yeah,
things finished, partly finished, good ideas?
I had a little batch that I wrote earlier last year. I got probably four, I think, that I'm happy with. One in particular, I started playing live um, probably about a year ago now, and every time I played it, people, I think it's costing me record sales because I've been playing it at gigs and people come up to buy my record and be like, "I love that song. It's on the record, right?" And I'm like, "It's actually that one's actually not." And that one was like, "Oh well, I'll get it when it comes out." But
Thanks.
that one's gone well, so I recorded that one.
The story of a rock and roll troubadour, right there. You
Yeah,
know?
I've recorded that one and another one. I think I'm going to put those out in the next couple of months as sort of little singles in between, and then I've got a few more on the boil. Yeah, trying to work towards something for probably 3 or 4 more on the way. But I need to sit down and focus because I've spent so much time since the record has come out trying to do all the stuff that you hate in the music world, doing promos. I do it all myself. So sending emails, trying to book shows, uh, trying to organize the logistics of all of that, do the posters, then do all the content, make these videos, make the artwork, do all of that stuff. The stuff that takes up a lot of time away from the actual writing part. So
It's this side of showbiz no one really gets to see, right? Is it when you got to roll up your sleeves and do it yourself, you know?
yeah, and you got to do both. Unfortunately, there's you sometimes like come across these like nice platitudes and things on the internet that if you spent less time on social media and more time practicing, you'd be a more successful musician, and you might be, but no one ever will know who you are.
Right,
It's the sad fact of
exactly.
it now. Like, I hate that
True.
damn social media shit, but uh, I still need to be around it. Unfortunately, even though I know I'm not very good at it either.
Hmm. I
But
think
you
it
need to
does
try and
has
make
it.
content somehow so people
Yeah,
see stuff.
exactly. I was going to say, I
Yeah,
think it does have its ups. I've recently discovered that YouTube Shorts. Well,
yeah, I
I,
haven't
I I
tried
know
that.
I know they've been around
Mm.
for ages, right? But I never did any of them just because I thought, well, it's all bollocks, right? So it's you put stuff out and then. But last week I put stuff out and I've had more views on one clip than I think anything else. So
I think the YouTube are really pushing those at the moment. I've seen a lot of them on my feeds come up.
so there
They're
you go. That's my
trying to
tip of the day. You know,
compete with
get
the other
get your
short form
shots
video
out.
stuff.
Mm.
Reels and
Of course, if you
stuff.
can single out that 1 minute, we'll have plenty of minutes here, mate. Don't worry for
Mm-mm.
high quality stuff to. So I'm in no fear of that. But yeah, it's social media is one of those. If you don't like the first year and a half, maybe even 2 years, I did this. I did a lot of it. I was doing stuff every day just because felt I didn't feel obliged. I wanted to, but I also at the same time wanted to share what the other person was saying. You know, the guests and all that. Right? It wasn't just an
Yeah,
ego thing, but I kind of soon realized, or maybe I didn't realize soon enough, but it's just it's a bit of a slog, and it kind of deflates you in the end a bit. You know, it's almost like it's won.
definitely.
And I hate to
Yeah,
sound as traditionally pessimistically Scottish as I am. You know, don't need any more fuel to the fire here. But yeah, it's one of those things, right?
yeah.
So
It's hard work.
put some clips out.
Yeah,
People watch it, enjoy it, dig it.
yeah.
Maybe click something else. Great.
And it's still there. That's the thing that's nice. Like, we haven't mentioned it yet, but the biggest one that worked for me was a song of mine that I put out before this last record. It was back in 2018 or 2017, I think. That got licensed into a PlayStation game.
All right.
That's the one of mine. It's called Melbourne Rain. It's by far the
Oh
one
yeah,
that's
right.
got the most plays on my
Yeah,
Spotify by
right.
like
Yeah,
a
I did. I
an order of
listened to it. Yeah.
magnitude or two because of that. And that game came out 4 or 5 years ago, and still now, like just earlier tonight, I had a message from some dude sending me a video of him. He'd learned to play the song and covered it, and sent me a YouTube video of it
Cool.
and said, "You great, blah blah." It's lovely, strange thing to
Excellent,
see.
man. Yeah,
But
right. Well, after all the kind of negative, well, not all the negatives, but
yeah, but
after
it's
it's
nice.
maybe been
It's
a bit
definitely got a
honest, but
space.
no,
It's got a
exactly
space.
right.
Yeah,
That's really nice, man. Because it must give you a little, as I was saying, there's some sense of satisfaction
hmm.
in it. You know, whether it's just you want to share someone else's work or your conversations or your music, whatever, and you can find some good in there.
I think it might be, from my side, I think it would be easy for me to share someone else's. You're always doing that thing of putting yourself out there when you're sharing your own, like, look how good I am on social media.
I did feel a bit like that myself, you know. Yes, right.
I don't like that. But I mean, you got to have that ego, I suppose, which is maybe the...
I mean, for me doing this, it's more about the guest than me. I'm just like the conduit, as it were, right? So, use me as you see fit, you know, that kind of thing.
I think I like doing those. I did that series of videos in what was it, November, with six videos with Joe, just the two of us playing together, and that was easy for me because it felt like I was showing off Joe rather than me.
It's a nice kind of mixed up video because in the background you can see kind of laptops and buttons and lights and all that kind of stuff, but at the same time you're playing kind of like really old creaky guitars and all that, you know what I mean? That in the best possible way.
I think that's the best thing. Capture, like, you know, Joe knows what he's doing with the recording stuff. I know a little bit of way around that stuff as well, and he's got a really lovely set of microphones and gear, and we can just put it all around us and then have our old guitars or old piano and capture it live.
I mean, is it hard to capture your sound, Steve? How would you describe your sound? That sound you're looking for? What I wrote down, I don't make many notes, but what I did write down, I can't remember. I didn't write down any songs in particular, but I just wrote down genres that kind of came to mind. So bluegrass, one of the songs is really bluegrassy. Can't remember which one because I didn't write the name down, but I'm just kind of jotting away. Americana, as you mentioned yourself, folky. But I mentioned... and that's as far as I go. But, you know, I could go on.
Yeah, I guess that's all in the right ballpark. I mean, if we talk about it from people who I've, you know, would love to sound like or be able to make records like, it would be people like John Prine or Townes Van Zandt or someone like that. Jackson Browne or for more modern stuff, I suppose, like Justin Townes Earle, or David Ramirez, people like that. So it's all that sort of world of sad, folky songwriting, but not so dark that there's no light in it. Like, I always love the way that someone like Prine or Townes Van Zandt and people could have these songs that were just the saddest or the most beautiful sad songs you'd ever heard, and then the next song will just be like a cheesy joke, because if it makes you laugh, it makes the sad sadder, and it makes the laugh bigger at the same time. You know, you put a bit of sweetness with it, or a bit of wit or something. You know, that can like sort of make the punchlines land, if that makes sense. Someone like Conor Oberst as well can do a bit of that, where he can have these
fierce, bright eyes.
Yeah, bright eyes. Yeah. Fierce writing with these like rhyme schemes and words that are just like laser targeted. That I really admire that kind of writing.
I think one of my favorite John Prine clips on YouTube, I forget where he's playing, maybe a TV show or something like that. But there's an audience there, and he tells us that he sings souvenirs. And he tells a story about being a mailman and all that kind of stuff, and how he got the gig at this live or open mic night or something like that, you know.
Yeah, he played for Chris Christopherson, right? Isn't that the story? Chris Christopherson got him to play and then told him to play it again or something. And
he's like, shit, I need to write another song now. Something like that. Like, without giving away the punchline, but yeah. Great storytellers, but with a kind of natural...
Yeah, that's a
almost effortless charm to it. Eh?
Being those fellas I was talking about before, Joey and Kenneth from the Milk Carton Kids, they're if you've ever seen them live before, they're a comedy duo on stage. Between their, you know, they'll write these lovely, sweet, sad songs, and then you know, knee slappingly hilarious. Like, the crowd will be in fits of laughter between the songs, and it's a real skill, because it makes the show that thing. You're
getting that real dynamic.
Yeah, that's something I don't know very good. I'm working on my stage presence. That's a big thing to learn, I think, coming from someone who's been in bands for, you know, I was in bands for 10 plus years, big bands too. I had a band at 6, another one 7, another one at 5. Going from that to being on stage by yourself is different, and having to run the crowd for that whole time, because it's the performance isn't just the songs. When you're on stage by yourself, it's like from the time you stand on to the time you get off, like a piece of theater. It's like what you wear and how you act on stage. The whole thing is the performance, and those people who are really good at it really thread that through. The other guy, Todd Schneider.
I don't think so. No.
All-time. If you ever want to hear good stories between songs, go listen to some Todd Schneider live albums. He's, unparalleled. He's the greatest. He'll tell this story for 15 minutes about how he wrote a song, and then play the song, and then you'll hear another gig, and he'll tell a completely different story about how he wrote that same song, and they're both incredible. It's just all a mystery,
That sounds like some great banter as well, just that kind of repartee, just that real connection between that and the crowd. You mentioned before just about the songwriting camp. How does something like that actually work? I mean, they advertise it online.
Yeah, I just found that there's a place, that's particular place in upstate New York. They've done a few over the years. I know that Steve Earle does one there, and I think there's a few others. Not just songwriting, music camps, guitar.
A friend of mine, when I lived in South Korea, went to one. From South Korea, went to somewhere in the States. I went to like Memphis or somewhere like that, somewhere a bit really? It's like, yeah. And he thought he was going to learn how, he's a fine guitar player as well, fine musician. And he thought he was going to learn how to really play when the Devil Went Down to Georgia type stuff, like really fast and all that, finger picking style and whatnot. And he said when he got there, he said there was a mixed ability, shall we say. He thought he would be like lower on the totem pole kind of thing, but he said it was really, but open, everyone was nice, and they were there for the same thing, right? It was the love of playing.
Yeah, I mean, I think from what I understand, that this place just approached the Milk Carton Kids and asked them to do it, and then they went into it not knowing how it would go, and yeah, I think it did turn out to be better than anyone thought. That first one, there's been a couple more since that a few of my friends have been to and said, I don't know, it was still great, maybe not quite as spectacular, but the first time is always going to be the one you remember or whatever. But that thing you spoke about the ability level was sort of at that camp. We had, I think there was about 40 people. And on the first night that we had a dinner, and then the Milk Carton Kids played a show, and then they put up a thing for like an open mic if anybody thought maybe some people might want to do it. They put like 10 slots, and I think 37 of the 40 signed up to play, something like that. And
that's what we're here for.
Shit.
It's going to be a long night.
The first guy played, and everybody went, holy crap, that was incredible. Second person played, same response. Third person played, same, equally as incredible. Fourth person played, equal, and everybody was like, well, hang on a minute, something's going on here. And yeah, there was spectacular riders over those few days. We, I think we stayed close friends too. COVID helped, because we'd sort of kept in touch afterwards a bit. We had a little Facebook group, but then when the whole world was in the start of the lockdown, and Zoom started as the thing people did. We did a Zoom like open mic one night where we all caught up. Most of us were there, and sort of everybody went on mute except one person, and you'd play a song, and then we'd go around. And we ended up doing that every Saturday night for a year. People came and went, but it was sort of Saturday afternoon in the States. Most of them were in the States, but there was a few other folks from Europe and so on, one from Australia. And yes, for me it was late at night, every Saturday night for a year, and that was like that kept my music going through that COVID period. It was like it was the scene that I'd actually kind of been missing in somewhere like Paris even before lockdown. It was the folk scene I needed. I was just playing for those people. Playing with good people makes you want to raise your game too.
Definitely.
When you're in a good open mic like that regularly. There's a few in Berlin that I get to every time I'm there as well. That are similar.
From a construction point of view, if that's even the right way to describe it, from a songwriting point of view, how does the camp work then? You go into pick numbers and go into groups that way, or do they give you
What
tasks?
did we
Or
do?
um,
It was a bit up in the air because I
tasks
don't
does
think they
sound
quite knew
a
what to
bit
do.
too. I've been in Germany too long.
Um,
It's like you give you tasks, you give you things to do, but I don't mean it. I mean it no more.
no, I don't know if it's become more solidified, but they because it was the first time it was a bit up in the air. But we sort of what did we do in the morning? We all broke off and tried to like basically write something and come back and work on it and sort of get that nugget of an idea at least of a song. You don't have to flesh it out, but try and find something, um, and then could work on it over the weekend. And the Milk Carton Kids and the other guys that were writers there would come and sort of work with them a little. Um, there was another day when it was focused on doing duets, like trying to find someone because those dudes sing like close harmony. So I think
Yeah,
we
when you
pushed a
see
bit of
them
that.
on YouTube, and you'll see this.
Um, we did a day where everybody sort of picked off and did a close harmony version of one or the other songs or a new song if you wanted to together. Um, I wrote a couple of things there. Actually, that song Amsterdam on my record, I had the like kernel of. I think I had the chorus and was missing a bit. And one of the days we were talking about songs and stuff, and I had this one that I showed. I said, "This one's not finished, but I got something." And the girl I was chatting with said, "Oh, you got to work on that one. We should do that song." Um, so I've always been a massive proponent of the like terror of the deadline in getting something done. And I had that song had been floating around for a while, and then I had to finish it, so I finished it that day, and we sang it that night, and that's the version that is on the record. So
Brilliant.
that kind of doesn't have to just be tasks, but just being in that intensely rich environment of creation just leads to creation anyway. Like it doesn't have to be a
There's a
specifically
flow
guided,
there, right?
yeah,
There's just
a specifically
something
guided
going on.
task.
But you had fun as
So
well, right? That was
yeah, it
the
was great.
good
Yeah.
point as well.
I barely
You
slept. We were up late every night.
quite right too.
Yeah, it was. It was.
That's what you
Lovely
do
fun.
when you go to camp, right? You do you stay up all night and play rock and
Yep.
roll and stuff, and have a good time. Speaking of that, what are your plans for later this year? So we talked about hitting the UK, some European dates as well in there.
I'm going to try and get back over another run through Germany and hopefully up to Scandinavia again. Went to Denmark for the first time last year, and it was lovely, and had a really nice reception there. So I'd like to get back there and just try and build up that network. I'd like to get back back to the UK, obviously, and see more of the UK than I've seen before. I'm just trying to work on booking it now. It's just tough, man. The amount of emails you send with no reply.
I've heard this. I've heard this
Whew.
from.
Got to keep pushing.
Yeah,
And
this might be the kind of the reaction now you're getting to that 2 year plus lockdown or very limited live music over that whole COVID period. So now people might thought it would have peaked last year, but it seems to have continued into this
yeah, I
year.
mean,
Just
I've had
the
replies
dates
also
are,
that
but
are like, "Oh yeah, we're booked until June 2024." I'm like, or not even for a little. Not. I'm not playing big theaters. I mean, like a little folk clubs in the UK are booked for a year and a half in advance, kind of thing. Like, whoa, okay, sure. The industry is. You got to have your tour planned for 4 years in the future or whatever now. And, the other one I'm looking into working at is finding a way to get over to the US, but it's just really hard with the visas because I've got all of those great contacts over there. Booking shows over there will be albeit small. I've got a great network from that camp of people who want to put me on bills. I'm just not allowed. The visa thing is real tough. So I've been looking into that, but it's a long road, unfortunately, a long expensive road to a US visa, but maybe.
are the are the crowds significantly different from home, Australia home? That is, like when you're playing. It's just when you mentioned there about playing in a band, you're kind of you're part of a bigger thing. Were you the guitar player in the band, lead or rhythm, or were you the singer as well?
The band I was in before I left, I was actually like I sang harmonies on every song, and I played like harp, blues harp. You know, a little bit of guitar, but most of the time I was playing harmonica, but with a through a big amplifier
Mm.
with a thing in my hand, and singing harmonies and all the songs. So I was sort of like the second front man, I guess. Played a little guitar, but not a lot. Um,
And now that you are solo, how do you find that transition from 4 or 5 guys in a band, and then onto that stage on your own? Just you and
I'm getting more
the
comfortable
light.
with it. It was hard at the start. I definitely felt like I wasn't in control of that, like holding the crowd, guiding them through the concert kind of thing. That's what they want, and being able to be with that the whole time. You're trying to think about 10 things at once. So in between songs, you kind of babble or don't say anything, rather than find a way to move through the songs cleverly, or if you make a mistake, not letting it rattle you or any of that. Just holding it together nicely. That's gotten easier. I've definitely found that I uh, don't drink anymore during or before or during a show. Like I used to go on stage with Rattlehand, that band I was in Australia with, a couple of schooners, and sit them on top of my amp, and throughout the show you drink them, and then whatever, it's
Yeah,
fine.
right.
Have a few more after. Now I just stick to the alcohol-free beers if I'm in Germany, or water, and then have a couple of beers after when I finish. But I just found that trying to keep it all together at the same time, when you're on your own, especially now I've been starting to play piano as well, which is a new thing I started to learn during pandemic. I wrote a few songs on piano, and now I've sort of, that's still scary for me. So if I go to a venue and there is an upright piano, then I'll make myself play a couple of songs on it, which has been fun. I've really enjoyed doing that, but it's still definitely hanging on for dear life half the time.
Tell us a story about your guitar, man. Is it a parlor guitar, or is
The
it?
guild I play normally,
Yeah.
yeah, it's over here if you want me to grab it. This one.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a guild M20. It's called. It's really nice.
And what was
It's a
your?
really nice little guitar.
It sounds great, man, on those recordings and stuff. It comes
Most
across
of
really
the
well.
records on that, yeah, the record has got a few other guitars on it, but that's the one I always play live. I really like little tiny, because I pick mostly, like, so I don't, a big boomy dreadnought is not necessarily what I'm looking for. I want that little woody, snappy sound of like a little Martin, like a Martin 0017 or something like that. Would also be a similar style as this guild, but I just played that guild in, I think it was in London when I bought that, checked it out in a shop, and loved it, and I still love it. Um, the record has a couple other guitars. It does have one big, lovely J45 Gibson my friend Bryony has, and also Joe let me play his Martin little, I think it's a 00, maybe it's a 0017, something like that.
Is
It's a
that the
little
one
guitar.
that's in the video or some of the
Um,
videos?
yeah, he'd be playing that. It's like from the 50s. It's like a real vintage
Yeah,
piece.
it looks. It
Beautiful old
looks.
thing.
Yeah,
I was kind of scared to hold it at first, but
right.
didn't drop it.
I was curious, because I wondered if you'd come from guitar playing background, but now it kind of makes sense if it sounds right for what you want it to be.
Yeah, I mean, I have a dreadnought, and I played it for many years as well. Like when I was younger, I played in um, all kinds of other covers and things like that. And you just strumming away, and so I've got one of those I've had since I was a young fella. I've still got it, it's back there, but I don't play much anymore. I tend to, like, the past few years, I've really latched onto these tiny, smaller parlor style guitars. Got another one over there, a little recording king that I really like playing as well.
So they might, because this is the thing. It's people not familiar with guitars or musical instruments kind of might think they're all the same, right? It's just you're like, oh, that's a wee one, or it's a different color. You're just like, oh, it sounds different, but it really is much shorter scale than
Yeah, the difference between guitars is I mean, it's one of those things. Any of those specialist, well, areas that, however deep you want to go down, you could find more differences. Like the real crazy ones will tell you the difference of a a 1955 Martin and a 1957 aren't the same at all. Where I'm not going to help you there, but
YouTube's your friend for that kind of stuff, maybe. Right?
I can hear what I can hear and feel what I like to play, and that's whatever that works nice for me. I didn't take my guitar back home this time. I always, when I'm traveling in Europe, I almost always try and train everywhere if I can, even if it takes a bit longer, just to avoid the headache of taking an acoustic guitar on a low-cost airline. And flying back to Australia, I've done a few times with guitars, and it's always just
shitting yourself a wee bit,
piece, and this time I didn't bother because I've got a guy I used to play in bands with in Australia. He's sort of switched and become into a Luthery sort of business, making his own guitars. Right. And I messaged him. He said, "Yeah, you can borrow one." The whole time I was home, so he lent me one of his, and it was a beautiful thing. Really nice guitar that I had for 3 months while I was at home. I got used to playing that too.
A bit kind of heartbreaking to give it back. You're like, okay, there you go. I was just looking after it,
Yeah, well, actually, that the Recording King little guitar I've got over here as well, I bought when I went to the States for that camp because I didn't want to fly my guild over. Partly because I didn't want to fly with it, but also after the camp, I did a drive for about 3 weeks, drive around Tennessee, and it was summertime. I didn't want to be worried about a hot guitar and be conscious of it all the time. So when I got to the US, I just bought a guitar went to Guitar Center and bought a $150 guitar, something like that, like a real cheap $200, just to take to the camp, and then got significantly attached to it because it was such a nice thing. So I wanted to bring it home. At the start, I thought I might have just sold it back or something.
Does the job as well. Oh, excuse me. Sorry.
Someone did tell me the secret about that, though. If you're ever traveling, is apparently, I think it's Guitar Center, has 90-day money back on guitar purchases, no question. So you could feasibly just buy a really expensive one, tour with it, take it back at the end, and get your money back. But I haven't tried that. Cheeky, I don't know if that actually works.
It's a bit. Save that one for the, the needs must tour.
That that song that I did for the video game was a really strange experience that I think a lot of people who maybe this does go out on the internet would know me from that first, because that has had so much more exposure than everything else. That was kind of and the success of that is kind of what pushed me to go back into music again, to be honest. I was still working at that games company. And then a friend who worked at a different one, it was a different games company in Paris that made the game called Detroit, said they were looking for a busker. It's a live action game kind of thing, not a live action, like a full 3D video game kind of thing. And there was someone busking in a scene, and they were looking for someone to do it. And so I went in and played one of my songs to the boss of the company, and he liked it. And then I had to go in and do the full motion capture for it, which is a really
green screens and all that.
No, not even. I had to get in like a wetsuit covered in balls. I had to shave my beard completely.
Oh, man.
And they put all these dots on my face. And I stood there and I played my song. And so, yeah.
A bit naked,
when you play the video game, the character in the end doesn't look anything like me because it's just a different 3D model, but it moves exactly like me. It's very weird to walk around. You stand in the game, you can walk around me singing my song, and it's sort of a strange out-of-body thing. But yeah, that was a really nice thing to have happen. And after it did get such nice success, it made me realize how much I'd missed playing music since I'd left Oz. So it kind of pushed me to go back into it. So that was a sweet one.
It's these kind of slightly more surreal moments that might just fall in your lap, and you don't really, you're maybe not consciously looking for something, but when it's good to take advantage of it. I don't be there forever, right?
Yeah.
What was the name of the game?
It's called Detroit Become Human, Beyond Human. Shit.
See, I'm not a
Become Human.
Become Human. I'm not a gamer at all. I've never had a console anyway. I don't know, it's a weird thing. I just never had one. But I know what they are, right? That's the main thing.
And yeah, now I just hope I can keep finding a way forward with the music.
Tell us where we can find you then, Steve. Where's a good place to look?
In the digital realm or in the real life world, we're talking.
Take your pick.
Well, I guess at the moment it's mostly the digital world. So SteveWallisMusic.com is probably the handmade by yours truly place to find everything. I've got I'm on all the socials. It's mostly Steve Wallis Music, which I'm
not
sure
to be confused with the camping guy on YouTube.
Ah, that fella. We've chatted a bit, actually. He's a really nice dude. He sent me a message a couple of years ago. Bounced messages back and forward every now and then. I said, if I ever get up to Canada, we'll have to make a video with him. I'll go camping with him. He's a good fella.
So there we go. There's something positive of social media, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah, I've been putting out a few videos on YouTube, so it's going okay. There's one more to come, and the out of that series of 6 that I had, I did with my buddy Joe, and the last one is also that single that I'm going to put out shortly, the one that's been going well, called "What It Takes." So that's currently getting mastered, and then I'll probably put that out in the next month. Maybe let's say 2 months to be safe. So I think there'll be 2 new songs online there. And then, yeah, I've got the record. I've got a big stack of vinyls back there that I finally got done just before I went to Australia. So I've still got most of them here. So if you want a vinyl of my record, please
check your store. I saw it.
Check my store
right, yes.
on the website.
Definitely.
And yeah, hopefully Germany again this year, and fingers crossed for a UK tour. I've had a few people asking. I just hopefully get some more venues to say yes, so I can make something that makes sense. Because if I get one at the one at the top of Scotland and one down in the bottom of Devon or something, it's going to be
it'll be a scenic trip.
It'll be a scenic trip that will be rather non-cost effective, but hopefully we can get a few more in there. And yeah,
I mean, in Edinburgh in August is maybe with the Fringe in Edinburgh Festival and all that going on, so it's kind of a non-starter, right?
No, I think it'll be later in the year. I think September, October, November, somewhere in there.
Perfect.
By the way it's looking.
All right, mate. You ready for a top 5 then? If I give you some questions, I don't know if you've heard an episode or you've heard.
I listened to the one with Dave Ingleton.
Yeah, do you know Dave?
Right. Yeah, I know him well. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a great chat. Yeah, Dave's
he runs that
top bloke.
Kindelstuben in
right,
Berlin, which is probably my favorite open mic in Berlin.
He's in the. Now, what was his genre? Acid
country or something?
Yeah, right. It's like
the Yonder Boys is his band, right?
The Yonder Boys, yeah, they sound great. And I see they're doing an Italian tour. I think it was. I saw.
I've done a few of those. Doesn't surprise me.
Oh.
Yeah.
So yeah, good for him, and he's getting around. And I often joke with guests who have someone in the band who plays a double bass or whatever, right? And it's the old taxi joke or getting on a bus and all that. But it's the
price. A friend who used to ride around West End in Brisbane with his double bass on his bicycle, just not in a case, just the double bass on his bicycle, riding down the street.
Precarious, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to be doing that too often, Someone's died now. Top 5. Guilty pleasure. Musical guilty pleasure.
Musical guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
Well, I like a lot of pop music. I don't know. We can say Taylor Swift's probably an easy one. She writes great melodies, man. I wish I could write melodies like her.
Ticket pricing? What are you thinking about that?
Ticket pricing?
There's this whole Ticketmaster.
I didn't follow that too well. Didn't she stand up against Ticketmaster or something? I didn't quite follow that.
Apparently, there's all these.
I know that Live Nation owns everything.
Yeah, like any gig, there'll be maybe 3 ticket prices, or your A, B, and C sections. And I think there was some sections in the arena she was playing that were going for like 10 grand a ticket, something ridiculous. Some. Who's going to pay that? Someone, right? So, Taylor Swift then.
What else was I listening to? I'm trying to think of more guilty pleasures now. Anyway, you said only one, so that'll do.
One's enough.
Yeah.
They'll all start trolling back later on tonight. You'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that one. Tell us someone you don't get then, Steve. Someone who you might think is a bit overrated, or you're just a bit like, yeah.
I don't like being a negative bastard. All right, here we go. Oh, I
Well,
know.
you might not
I know.
just get
I got.
them, you know
I
what I
got it.
mean?
Yeah. What's the music guy? The Jacob Collier.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's like the world's. He's got the music brain and can do everything music, but I find his music to be insipid. Maybe it might be very clever, but I don't enjoy it.
I think that's a fair point. Well made. Concisely made, even, you know? There's, yeah, from not really being a negative point or being too negative, but I really can't handle Queen. I thought I'd got over it,
Oh, yeah.
but no. I was out on my bike the other day, like my bike, you know, not motorbike, and I just had some headphones on because I'm in the middle of nowhere. And Spotify have got this thing where they recommend songs for you, but you can switch it off, right? But mine keeps coming back
Yeah,
on.
mine does
So
too. Yeah.
I've made a playlist, and these bastards are sending me things that I'm like, no, I'm like, fuck, I made a fucking playlist so I don't have to listen to other
Yeah.
stuff, you know? So I actually had to stop. What was it? Come on. I can't remember the Queen song. I made it into about 20 seconds. I stopped the fucking mic. I was like, all right, fuck it. You know, it's like,
You remember all those years ago when Apple put that U2 album on everyone's iPod in the world?
it's classic, man.
Outrageous.
You know? Oh Jesus! That I don't know if you've heard the U2 album, the songs of whatever it's called. Oh man, it's grim. You know that the idea less is more.
Mm.
Well,
Well, that's the thing with Collier. I was saying, he's got
mm,
27 chords with 27 notes in each one that are all perfectly in the right place. But I'll have 3 chords on a shitty guitar and some dude telling his story. You know,
exactly.
every time in my book.
Oh, what I forget what the U2 album was. Fucking awful. It sounds really bad. You know, it's just. Ugh. And they're playing in Vegas for the next 6 months or something as well. So it's kind of it's just a parody or a pantomime. Tell us a venue you've played at or you've seen someone, Steve, where you would, you know, you've had a really nice time or it's a nice sounding room.
Let me think. For just there's too many places I've been. Let me narrow it down to a. If I think of somewhere in Paris, then I'll just because that makes the most sense. I'll say Café de la Danse. I haven't played there. I would like to, but it's probably my favorite of the Paris venues where I've seen a lot of bands. I saw Jason Isbell in the 400 unit there, which was spectacular, and I saw John Prine. John Prine played there.
Oh wow!
Which was his first ever gig in Paris in his whole life, and his last ever gig before he died.
Wow!
Yeah, that was crazy. He'd never played in Paris before, and he booked and came out. And on the tour, I think it was like the night before, or a couple of days before, he'd fallen over, and he was on a little motorized scooter, and he had to sit down to play because he never used to sit down to play. He sat down to play and kept apologizing for it on stage. He's like, I normally dance off stage, and I hurt my hip, so we have to pull the tour, and we're going home tomorrow, but I'm not going to miss this one. And he went home, and then he got COVID.
Yeah, man.
That was the end of him. But yeah, that's a beautiful venue.
I saw Jason Isbell in 2017. 2017, yeah, and the same night in Glasgow. I was living in Scotland at the time, and Metallica were in town the same night. And guess what show I went to? So,
I feel kind of bad because there's a big music festival in Australia called Blues Fest that is in Byron Bay, which is where I grew up, and so I started going to that when I was about 8, 9, 10 years old, something like that, 10 years old. And I went every year with my family until I was 30, till I moved to France. And when I was about, I don't know, must have been about 20, something like that, 19, 20, I was backstage for some reason. I got a pass to get backstage, and I bought Isabel a beer. I bought him a whiskey when he was still drinking after he's had this whole life turning around sobriety career. Yeah, I can say I bought Isabel a whiskey. I guess a lot of people could say that, to be honest. But still, I remember it.
He did. Speaking of stories at gigs, so I saw him in. Oh man, I can't remember the venue. Yeah, but not the Barrowlands in Glasgow, but I'll come back to it. But a decent size, and then halfway through the set or whatever, he's like, "Oh, hi, Glasgow, blah, blah." He doesn't really talk very much between songs and all that. He kind of just gets on with it. And he recalled being really drunk in his drinking days, of course, when playing in a club in Glasgow called King Tut's Wawa Hut. And he said he can remember playing in there with the name of the band he was in before, which is escaping.
Drive-By Truckers.
Drive-By Truckers, thank you. And he just said he remembered it being so loud that it almost kind of lifted him off the ground. That's all he can remember from the gig, being really drunk and being really loud and being in Glasgow. So he said it was nice to see the city and actually remember where he was for a change.
It's a great name for a venue too.
King Tut's, yeah. Where did we get to? Go to karaoke song.
Oh, shit. I don't do it very often. I don't know. Last time I can remember doing karaoke, I sang that Carly Rae Jepsen song. Call Me Maybe.
All right.
I wouldn't say it went well.
It's fun. I guess that's the whole thing, right? Taking you to that whole other place.
Yeah, I don't do it very often. I remember I used to work with this bunch of programmers, and this guy was really timid, quiet, typical programmer guy. Came to work one day on a Monday with like a big knee brace on, and this is like the least sporty dude you're ever going to meet. Like, mate, what the hell did you do on the weekend? He's like, yeah, I dislocated my knee. I said, how did you dislocate your knee? Karaoke.
Okay, right. So I guess that's his alter ego, right?
He was in the moment, yeah.
My wife and I were in a pub last Friday night here in Dortmund. Just speaking of bars with strange names, and this pub is called Happy Happy Ding Dong. Right? So we went in. So we went. It was my wife's birthday last week, so we went out on the Friday night. We had some nice dinner in a Vietnamese place. Walked along at the pub, ordered a couple of drinks and all that, and start playing bingo in this pub, right? So it's a bit more of a traditional kind of German pub. But music was great soundtrack on that night. It was a kind of bit new wave, but all good. And then one of the signs on the wall, they do karaoke Thursdays and Saturdays, I think. So my wife, she's like, "Oh, can we come back to a karaoke night?" Whatever. So yes, it's on the card. So look out, Dortmund. Because I told her, I said, "Oh yeah, next time you're in town, I'll get you a pint." Definitely. And the last one then, tell us someone we should be listening to. Maybe it's not on our radar, but you're going to put that right for us.
I'll tell you should be listening to a girl named Ellie Turner.
You did the cover version on YouTube.
I did a version.
I checked that out.
She was at that camp. She's a girl from, I think she's from Texas originally, but she lives in Nashville now. And what a voice, man! What a songwriter. She's a real special one. Yeah, she's a lovely person and a lovely writer. She just put out her record as well, her first one, which is a bit in the. It's just like two guitars, two voices, a bit Gillian Welch and Dave kind of style,
okay,
Great. Gorgeous stuff. Listen to it.
I wasn't really familiar with them either. And Gillian Welch and Dave
Rawlings.
Thank you. It's a bit long. It's Monday. We should say we're recording this in the most rock and roll day of the week on a Monday night. And we both had busy days. I did an episode with a guy based in Hamburg, and he put me on to the Gillian Welch thing and all that one, and it's fantastic. I didn't know.
That was a real. When I first listened to the Time the Revelator album.
Yeah.
Whenever I think I was. Don't remember how old I was, but regardless, my early 20s somewhere there when I listened to that. That was kind of a fairly landmark bit of.
There's some great live versions online as well, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah, spectacular.
Yeah, nice one, Steve. Thanks a lot, mate. It's been great catching up with you, and here's hoping all the best for this year. Get on the road.
Yep, hopefully I'll make it happen.
And we'll be in touch, man.
Cheers.
All right, mate. Cheers.
No worries.